If what you're creating right now feels frustrating, you need to know that creative energy and the reality that you're creating is protecting something within you, protecting a reality, it's protecting an identity for something new to birth, for something new to emerge and grow. Something has to die in order to go through that process of regeneration or alchemization of something has to die and rot out and go into the soil and then transform and feed the new life that's coming through. The desire itself isn't going to move you forward. It's the willingness to be seen and to be vulnerable. This is about having an intimate relationship with fear, so you're actually alchemizing it in a sustainable way. Welcome back. Today we're going to go into the topic of rewiring patterns and why you keep recreating the same patterns, whether that's in a relationship, dynamic that you're in, or really in any area of your life. Because what I'm really speaking to today is that repetitive loop that you start to become aware of where you get yourself in the same situation or dynamic and you start to feel really frustrated and almost victimized around, why do I keep ending up here? After all of the work that I've done, after everything I've invested, after how much I've tried to grow and change who I am as a person, why is this particular area or this particular aspect feeling frustrating? Why is it making me feel hopeless? Why is it making me doubt myself? Why is it wearing me down? And how do I actually change it beyond what I've already been doing? Because I feel like I've done all of the things, and yet here we are again. And so there is a very kind of wise or embodied way, an empowered way of looking at these moments and these creations of looping patterns that we seem stuck inside of, that's going to completely change the way you see those moments and actually allow you to alchemize them and transform them rather than feeling like you're being punished or feeling victimized inside of them. We're going to give you the insight and the information that you need to be able to see what it is that you're not currently seeing so that you can change it. And if you want to do this in-depth work around your relationship patterns, you can access all of the information in the show notes around our free resources, as well as our signature relationship transformation program, Alchemy of Connection. So let's get into it. And so the first thing that I want to really speak about is that the pattern that you continues in the way that it does because it's working for you. Yes, currently there's a new version of you that's trying to break through, that wants something different. There is a desire, a yearning, a longing, a creative fire that is moving through you that's saying, no, this isn't working. But there's also an aspect of you that this is working for. Now, that is the first thing you need to know, because you have to be able to accept that for some reason, this is absolutely serving me. That doesn't stop you from moving forward and working to transform this. It doesn't mean you just settle and say this is it then. But you do have to find a level of acceptance of this is meeting my needs in some way. I might not be cognizant of why I'm doing it or the full picture. That'll come in hindsight. But what I do know is that I wouldn't be creating it if it wasn't working for me in some way. So that just gives you a little bit of space to accept the current reality so you can actually work with it. Because if you can't find more spaciousness and more allowing, the friction and the victimization and the conflict that you have with the current reality you're creating you can't work with it inside of that. It's like any conflict. Until you get enough space to actually kind of see and break down more of the mechanisms inside of the issue at hand, nothing shifts. You remain inside of a conflict. And so this is that same kind of thing. So you have to accept that for whatever reason, what you're creating versus the desire that you have and the conflict between those two things is happening, that the current reality in some way has been working for you. And we're going to talk about why that is today and then how you start to move forward and actually create what it is that you're stepping into. So let's talk about the things that it's protecting. So if what you're creating right now feels frustrating, you need to know that that creative energy and the reality that you're creating is protecting something within you, protecting a reality. It's protecting an identity. It's protecting a version that you have of yourself, an idea that we hold of ourselves that is being protected inside of the current reality. So it's preserving an identity. It's protecting us from a different reality that feels like it's unknown. It feels risky. It feels scary. It feels vulnerable. It feels exposing. And so this pattern that you find yourself in of attracting this same dynamic is keeping you from that unknown state that at the moment perhaps you feel not resourced enough to meet, not supported enough, not rested enough, not knowledgeable enough to meet yet. What is also happening inside of the current pattern is you are protecting yourself from a grief. You're protecting yourself from a letting go, because the frustration, the anger is that armouring, it's that protection. So there is a deeper vulnerability, there is a deeper letting go into this unknown next stage that is currently where you are protecting yourself. And that's really important to know. We'll go into that deeper. There is also inside of this attachment or protection of our identity or the current perception that we have of ourselves, there's an attachment to our fantasy that always comes with the identity or the ego. Like we think things are the way that they are, or we want to believe certain things are the way that we are, or we are a certain way. And there's going to be aspects of that that need to be dismantled in order for you to rewrite this pattern and step out of it into something new. So good to be aware of, because that can feel a little bit destabilizing, because that is the sense of self that we are dissolving or deconstructing. Also, the thing you're protecting yourself against is this new level of self-responsibility, this new level of responsibility in reality, because stepping out of this pattern and what you're creating on a loop and rewiring it and alchemizing it means you're going to need more responsibility in the way that you show up. You're going to need new skills. You're going to need a new way of holding yourself, a new way of relating. All of that is a level of responsibility that right now you might feel scared of, but more so likely you just feel scarce around, like it feels too much to hold. And so we'll go into that a little bit deeper as well today. So let's talk about the protection around grief. Every single change requires you to weather a loss. Every single kind. It might not be the loss that you think it is, But like we were saying, it might be the loss of your perception. It might be the loss of your sense of self in some way. It might be the restructuring of a relationship. It might just be the letting go of hurt, letting go of anger. But there is a loss. It might letting go. It might be something bigger. You might need to weather a greater loss, but it is a letting go of something. All change requires a letting go. And this ties into the grief aspect. It also ties into the stepping into the unknown, because when we go through the weathering of a loss or the letting go, that's what dissolves the protection and the armouring that we've been carrying and says, I'm willing to surrender my frustration with the current reality in order to open up and just surrender into the space of the unknown to allow something new to come in. So whatever that loss kind of looks like and the ecosystem of that, because there'll be many different facets that play into that, what it's doing is allowing you to open up space for something different. And that's really important to know when we're in conflict with our reality or a pattern of creation and we're frustrated by it. There's no space. There's no space for anything else to be created. So you need to start to be willing to see it a little bit differently. Let go of some of the resistance to reality. Let go of some of the gripping to the current reality. Maybe not just in this dynamic, but overall within yourself, in order to allow space for something else to come in. Because this is one of the biggest reasons that we never move beyond certain patterns and certain dynamics. We don't ever perhaps create what it is that we truly desire. Because for something new to birth, for something new to emerge and grow, something has to die in order to go through that process of regeneration or alchemization. Of something has to die and rot out and go into the soil and then transform and feed the new life that's coming through. So if you're gripping really hard to the current reality in all its forms, nothing really has the space or the potential to shift. It's something to be very, very aware of. And it's not always the relationship itself, whatever this dynamic that is frustrating, even though if you keep coming up against it and there's a lot of anger, if you have quite a lot of fire and quite a lot of creative fire that's trying to create something different, you might feel like you have to kind of destroy a lot of things in physical reality to make it happen. And I'm not saying that could possibly be true. Maybe your entire life needs an overhaul, but there's also a lack of energetic and emotional maturity inside of that process of, if that anger or that creative fire becomes so destructive that it just kind of destroys rather than, takes us through that process of unwinding and letting the grief move and actually letting go. There's just an emotional immaturity inside of it. And it comes from what we said before, weathering a loss, accessing grief. If we just stay inside of the anger, we're going to keep thinking we need to change our external reality when perhaps the deeper request or requirement of us is to feel a deeper hurt and a deeper grief and vulnerability that we haven't been able to access. So it may not be the thing that you think is obvious that needs change or that's going to be lost. It could be, but it also could be the fantasy. It could be a future that you imagined. It could be the idea of the dynamic or whatever the situation is in current reality. An identity of being a certain way within yourself or being perceived or seen a certain way. It might be the death or the letting go of a familiar role that you've always played. And quite often, or usually, there's an element of having to have it all together, having to have it figured out, knowing everything inside of this reality. And then there's this humility as we dissolve that layer of the ego and let ourselves realize that we don't know this next bit. But we will grip on, and the ego and the nervous system will hold on for as long as we can, because the ego can't just die, this radical, dramatic death without us being very, very destabilized. So we have to, if we're going to stay functional in our life and our relationships, we're going to have to slowly, sustainably deconstruct and compost and decompose the current state of our identity, rather than destabilizing ourselves to a place of dysfunction. So there might also be a loss of, there's usually a loss of a sense of gripping, a sense of forcing, a sense of bracing, a tension. So anything that you do in the realm of allowing yourself to feel more spacious, so whether that's movement, body work, going and doing something relaxing, breath, whatever it is that you do to create more space that changes the tension patterns in the body, that changes the scarcity patterns in the body, that's going to benefit these patterns that you have running on a loop. Because when you are in this dynamic, you're meeting a certain level of survival-based needs, but you're not yet meeting or cognizant of the deeper, more embodied, more spacious needs that sit below that. And so in order to meet those, your body, or in order for you to even understand what that might look and feel like, you have to allow yourself to come a little bit beyond the current survival patterns of tension and gripping and bracing, like we said, because the new version of you, the one that's outside of these loops, that has created something different, is more spacious, is more relaxed, is more open, has more mobilization of energy, has more joy, has more expansion, has more breath. So all of those things that you do as part of your own embodiment practice to be in yourself with more spaciousness is going to help you transform these patterns and connect to yourself at a deeper level, which is therefore going to connect to this new version of you that lives inside a different pattern than the one you're creating. So coming back to the weathering of the loss, this is what I like to call like the seasonal winter of change. The main reason that people don't break the patterns or dissolve the patterns is the fear of not being able, or the fear of, or the inability to weather an internal winter, or just a winter, an energetic winter in the seasons of our life. Because you may find in changing who you are, if you're doing that at a core level, that there is a big shift of identity And then a big shift of reality. You might find there's a lot of solitude. You might find there's a lot of introspection time and alone time, or the loss of things that you thought were going to work out in a certain way, and your ability to weather that internal and potentially external winter of change is absolutely crucial. That is the season where the old has fallen away, but the new hasn't yet emerged. The deeper you can go into that space of the unknown and surrender into it and be patient and allow new inspiration, new ways of being, new insight, new wisdom to emerge, the better off you are going to be. Most people will turn away from that process because they'll be gripping to the survival mechanisms of the ego, what my life looks like, what my relationships look like, who I am inside of all of these things, and an unwillingness to deconstruct those things. So it's important that we also understand that inside of that there is a sense of emptiness that will need to be met. Again, you can't meet that emptiness of an ego death all at once. I mean, you may have gone on journeys or done things where you've experienced that to a decent amount, but to integrate that into reality in a way that you can hold it and it's wisdom and not this thing that your mind and your nervous system are still trying to, integrate and wrap their head around. To do that, you have to do it slowly. You have to do it in digestible pieces. And so that emptiness, just think of microdosing the ego death, microdosing the emptiness, because the enormity of it, if you were to, if I look back now and look at the seasonal winter or the emptiness, the solitude that I faced, even though there was a knowing that it was right. If I had looked at what my life would look like from the outside looking in before going into it and what I would need to weather, it would have felt too big to even really comprehend. But to be in it, whilst there were obviously challenges and it was confronting at times, you're doing it one day at a time. You're doing it in digestible pieces. You're not looking at the entire transformation of a human and the birth of a new identity and thinking, oh yeah, I can do that. It's a process. And so the letting go and the loss, to look at it straight on of what you might be deconstructing for yourself, might feel overwhelming. And it might not. But in many cases, it might feel overwhelming, and that's why a lot of people turn back. That's why they call it the hero's journey. So we don't stay stuck on a loop, recreating the same dynamics inside of frustration because we can't access a deeper truth. We do it because we're not resourced enough to survive what that truth would A, cost us, and B, ask us to be responsible for. So this is why whenever I work with anybody at the beginning, it's just understanding your relationship with resource. That's all it is, because you have to be supported enough internally and environmentally as well. Have your basic needs met in order to go through an ego shift or an identity shift or a timeline upgrade. your basic needs have to be met for you to meet that deeper set of needs. A lot of people think that they can bypass the foundational needs that your body and your nervous system require and then go through this spirituality work or this ego work. But all it does is keep you destabilized. All it does is keep you dysregulated. Because in order to meet your new set of needs, your new evolved set of needs, you have to meet the first ones. You have to meet the first set. They have to be satiated enough for you to be able to go, yep, that building block is there. I can now take the next step. That is the work and the patience that most people override. So let's talk about the winter season just a little bit more and why the in-between can feel so threatening. So all change to patterns and dynamics that you're creating create that inner winter that we've spoken about, which is just an uncomfortable gap of emptiness or spaciousness or what feels like nothingness, but it's actually just real, subtle, energetic work. So it makes weathering that and sitting in that makes people incredibly not only grounded because you're sitting in the fertile soil and you're letting something die before something else emerges. Not only do you become so much more grounded and embodied, and that is a really visceral felt thing, but you also become so much more attuned to the simplicities of life because you've accessed what life force or creative energy feels like to a subtler degree. Whereas the majority of society is so bombarded by loud noises and overstimulated that there isn't enough quiet in order to access these deeper, more subtle, more intimate and beautiful moments and experiences. So you may know the thing that you're no longer willing to participate in, the intensity of that, the tension of that, the frustration of that. So you might know and feel the old pattern dying away, but you don't yet have evidence of the new reality. So many people, and it's a normal process when we've got a lot of fear, unresolved content, to want evidence of the new reality before we deconstruct the old. And yes, you're kind of going to get a bit of both in terms of you're going to want to be putting things into action where you can see that they're paying off. You might not see it in physical reality, but you can feel it. Yes, this is paying off because I feel more of myself. I feel more confident. I feel more spacious. I feel more aligned. I feel more regulated. I feel more of my true and whole self. Like you're doing that work as a way to deconstruct the old pattern, but it's never going to erase the need to sit in that uncomfortable gap of just what comes next? What now? Okay, that I've closed that off. Now what happens? How do I move? How do I operate? How do I move forward in this new way? You have to be willing to sit in that space before that becomes clear. This is where, when it's new to us, the nervous system, the mind, the body can panic because you'll have the narrative of what if nothing better comes along? All the scarcity. What if I'm alone forever? What if I made the wrong choice? What if this reality was the best that I was creating? Or what if change is going to cost me too much? Like all of these things are valid questions. And they're also the mechanisms and the fears that kept your old reality and old patterns in place. So just get used to facing the questions. Get used to integrating the fear. Get used to meeting the fear. Get used to communicating with it. If you do anything, apart from resource, it is get to know your fear. Have a conversation with her, because at every evolution, she's going to come up, and she's going to come up in a new way, in a deeper way that you didn't realize that was a fear-based way of operating. That was a scarce way of operating. Get to know her, sit with her, ask her questions. So you're not just bulldozing past her and pretending fear's not there. I see that a lot in personal development spaces. No, this is about having an intimate relationship with fear, so you're actually alchemizing it in a sustainable way. So the unknown, it's really important to understand that this unknown, this inner winter, this seasonal discomfort of emptiness is where the new pattern and the new reality is built. But it's also where the old pattern is the most seductive. It's also where you get hooked back in again. But this is what I need you to know. As long as you are seeing it differently, you're going through the cycles and you're repeating the same thing, but as long as you are starting to view it differently, that you have more wisdom each time, that you showed up with a little bit more consciousness, more spaciousness, more awareness, a different way of meeting it each time, as long as you can feel those micro shifts, then we're getting somewhere. It's not about, again, resolving the whole pattern and creating a new identity overnight, a new reality and creating what you want overnight. It's about actually integrating that entire pattern piece by piece. So that means you're going to have to keep meeting it with new eyes, because there's more to learn. There's more in there. And this is what this episode is all about, to give you knowledge and tools as to how to view it in a different way, so you're seeing it with new eyes rather than the perception that you currently have of it, which is, I don't want this. It's annoying me and I want something different. Why does this keep happening? So let's talk about the victimization, because this is really important too, because this is when we know that there is an old identity involved, because there's ego involved, because that is the protection mechanism that creates the victimization. So it's okay to be victimized in the way that it's okay to be hurt. It's okay for our current reality to cause us hurt or pain, and to feel like an emotional or even physical victim to our current reality. That is normal. A continual narrative of victimization keeps the pattern in place, is the pattern, and it just tells us there is energetic and emotional stagnation that's keeping you in resistance with reality. So there's a real difference between acknowledging harm in a hurtful situation and remaining identified with victimization. So even when there is deep hurt, deep trauma, deep betrayal, deep abandonment, neglect, heartbreak, all of that, the subconscious or even conscious narrative that we are starting to become aware of how victimized we feel inside of the current reality that we are living inside of, just means that there is a lot of emotional movement that needs to happen, a lot of emotional literacy, attunement, maturity, expression that needs to be accessed. Because if we're going to change a pattern, we have to accept the current one and in all its parts and what it was actually there to serve, and thank it and send it on its way. Otherwise, we bypass part of it and we just recreate it. You have to become cognizant and aware of as much of it as you possibly can. So a good sign to just become aware of the victimization, it's this narrative that keeps asking us, why is this happening to me? Why am I here? Is there's a hopelessness to it? Whereas active participation says, given that this is happening or has happened, how do I want to work with it? What do I want to do with it? Rather than just feeling like we're lumped with no choice with what we're being given, alchemization and empowerment says I'm going to participate in this because I am participating. And I'm going to be aware that I'm participating. And then how would I like to now meet this? How would I like to now participate in it? So victimization is like, I'm not really a participant. This is happening to me versus this is happening in my reality. How do I get my hands kind of messy and in the dirt and actually start to work with it? Yeah. That is such an important distinction to make. Now, this one's an important one, and this is I created this hopelessness kind of trap that we get inside of self-development. Like, I'm taking so much responsibility that it's now become toxic that I'm blaming myself. This is happening, and so I am responsible for it, but I also can't see how I can possibly create anything different, so it's all my fault. I'm a failure. I'm creating this. Please understand that at all moments you are co-creating with something. Where the nervous system and the ego is kind of blocked in that kind of relationship where we've created a protective mechanism that says it's my fault, therefore that protects me. But what it does is it doesn't see the whole picture of the co-creation of the relationship. So it actually shuts out the things or the people, the reality that you are co-creating with. It self-blames, but it also keeps you in that ego trap, that armoring, that protection, and those same loops. Because to change it, you have to be willing, like we said, to participate in the reality of the co-creation and work with, get your hands dirty, get, involved with what is happening in your reality and start to be an active participant. So let's go into this one a little bit deeper of I created this trap that can happen in spiritual and self-development spaces. So in personal development spaces, we can hear you're responsible, you created this. Your nervous system is choosing this. Your beliefs are manifesting this. And there is truth in this, but there's no relationship in that. That almost, and it does, places people as like a god inside of their reality. And it's the spiritual ego of I am in full control of my reality, and it discards and dismisses the relational web of creation that's happening in and around everything that we are doing. So it creates this spiritual ego of I can create anything that I want in my reality, but then there's no emotional attunement to the things and the people around us. And there's no participation. And maybe there's a lot of armoring or there's a lot of dysfunctional relating happening then in that, because that becomes distorted as well. People can then subconsciously, whether you're aware of it or not, turn it into I'm broken, I caused this, something is wrong with me, why do I keep creating this? I'm broken, I've done all of this work, why do I keep creating this? I'm attracting this because, I haven't, done enough. None of that narrative creates change. That's actually part of the protection mechanism. It's part of the shame. It's part of the current cycle. And a more useful way of approaching this is I'm thinking I'm maybe participating in this, I may be allowing this. I may be orienting myself around this current reality, this current pattern. I may be choosing this from an old wound or a certain aspect of myself. And I may also be abandoning myself here. I may also not be setting boundaries here. I may also not be seeing things clearly here. And if I were to recognize that I am participating in a reality that is also participating with me, how would I then participate differently? So I want you to think more about the fact that you are co-creating in all moments. And then you're also able to, ask for help, not just in your physical reality, but spiritually. I want to see this differently. What can I do differently here? How can I move or participate differently? You're starting to actually realize that you are in a relationship with your reality rather than that spiritual ego of like, I am the creator, I am God. And it's not what's happening. So the point is not that I created this because I'm broken in some way. It's I have been participating in this creative cycle. And now I want to participate in creating something different. I want to change the way I am participating in this moment, in this pattern in my life. Because creating our reality doesn't mean that we are in charge and we are controlling everything that happens. It's not the reality of things. It can be a very seductive or alluring narrative in that it's all your responsibility, but there is a divine unfolding of everything too. So yes, you are responsible for yourself and you are also co-creating it and participating in something way bigger and far larger than just I create my own reality. So this means then that you're going to have to become responsible for what you're allowing, right? Because it's relational. You're starting to see what in my reality is happening. What am I allowing rather than, oh, this is just a me thing. This is a frequency thing. This is how I orient myself. Or actually, what am I allowing to happen? What am I repeating? What am I allowing other people to repeat? What am I ignoring? What am I sweeping under the rug? What am I making excuses for in myself and other people? What am I continually investing in? What am I refusing to let go of? What am I scared of participating in that's going to cause me to grow? And what am I actually willing to practice next? And then the next thing that I want to talk about is how change requires active participation in a new reality. This is probably the most vulnerable part. A new pattern, a new kind of relationship, a new reality, a new way of showing up isn't going to appear because we just stopped liking the old one. We got sick of it. We actually have to actively be building something different. Like we said, you will not deconstruct or compost or let go of the old reality unless you are also actively building a new one. So that is going to require new skills you don't have, new knowledge you don't have, new standards, new support, new investments, new behaviors, new capacity, new ways of showing up and holding things, a new tolerance for uncomfortable situations, new ways of communicating. So you can stay yearning and desiring a different outcome while staying with the same skill set, the same knowledge, the same support network, and that will keep you exactly where you are. The desire itself isn't going to move you forward. It's the willingness to be seen and to be vulnerable. The people that I see that make the biggest changes in their lives and realities and actually change their patterns at their core, not from performance, not from faking, but legitimately change things. They are constantly learning. They're constantly asking questions. They're constantly trying new things, doing new courses, working with new people. They are trying everything. Not from, sometimes there might be a sense of urgency to it, of course, but it's just a sense of wanting to learn new things and continually growing and expanding and learning to do things in a new way, not just absorbing more information, but actually, how can I learn a new skill and a new way of showing up in the world? If you're willing to continually learn new skills in every area of your life, whether that be learning a new skill in gardening or a different skill in the gym or going to a certain exercise class or studying something new or working with a different therapist or coach or modality. If you're willing to upskill yourself and learn new things continually, and you are feeding that curiosity and learning in that way, good things will happen. Things will change, because if you're willing to continually step out of your comfort zone and be exposed and say, I need help, this is not working for me, rather than it's fine, I've got it all together, I know everything there is to know, but then deep down being frustrated with what you're creating, that's not going to work. So you cannot build the new pattern, the new dynamic. You can't attract the new thing while continually making the same emotional investments into the current reality that you're making. You have to, I like to think of it as like a bucket. You've got a bucket of energy that is going into the new reality that you're creating. You've got a bucket of energy that is so we've got a bucket of energy that is going into the current reality that you're creating. And then you've got a bucket of energy that's going into the new reality that you want, whatever it is. And right now, the first bucket of the current reality might be full. It's full of energetic investment. It's full of time, money, energy, resource, attention. Everything is focused on that bucket. Maybe there's about 20% that's in the new bucket. That's the desire, that's the yearning, that's the wanting something different. You actually need to take from the first bucket and start investing in the second bucket in terms of what is it that you want? What is it that you desire? What does that start to look like? And how do I just start investing, start to put my focus, my energy, my time, my attention over on that second bucket? If you just continually do that, you are working a muscle of a new identity that's being built, a new pattern that's being built, a new way of showing up. And it's all about repetition to teach yourself and your mind and your body that it's safe to have that reality. So just piece by piece, take time, energy, focus, money, investment, everything out of the first one into the second one. So many people get stuck in that they're questioning, am I making the right investment? Am I putting my energy in the right places is this aligned? Is this where I want to go? Is this the right investment? If it's a investment and it is building the skill sets that you need in terms of confidence, clarity, regulation, better relationship skills, better embodiment skills, if it is building those things, it's the right investment, because you don't get the external outcome that you desire from the old embodiment. So you actually build the bucket is the embodiment. Stop worrying about the external manifestation and invest in the embodiment, because once that embodiment bucket is now overflowing, that's when it's going to manifest in physical reality. As people and I've done this, I've been there, I understand it. We get so caught up in, is this the right investment? Is this the right thing? Is this where I should be investing? If you're learning, if you're growing, if you are increasing in confidence, awareness, it is the right bucket. You'll just refine and invest better as you go. But invest in the embodiment, invest in you, invest in that healing, and you will be on the way. So let's talk about the mechanism that's actually going to change the pattern. Like we've just said, patterns change by repetition and repeated embodied interruption from the old energetic investment and repetition of the new energetic investment. It doesn't happen in one big realization, one big ego death, one practice, one journal entry, one important conversation that gives you closure and allows you to move on. Whatever that is, it's repeated, often boring, subtle, monotonous moments of facing a similar reality differently over and over and over again. So you're seeing things more clearly. You're stopping relating to the fantasy. You are stopping sweeping the facts under the rug. You are stopping calling confusion okay. You're stopping discarding or dismissing your own values and integrity. You're increasing your capacity. So you're learning to tolerate uncomfortable feelings. You're learning to tolerate the discomfort of learning and growing and being vulnerable and being seen. You're learning to tolerate these feelings of agitation or anger and then grief. You're also willing to and learning to tolerate the peace that comes with that spaciousness and that emptiness and that knowing that you have created something that takes you away from those constant cycles of frustration and tension. And you're learning to tolerate not grasping and chasing and forcing. You're also building support around the new pattern. You're building the awareness that I can do this is okay, this is safe. It's all right to be that version of me. I can weather the loss, I can weather the change, I can stand in this new identity, this new pattern, this new reality. And it's going to be okay. It's going to require you practicing new relational behaviors in all areas of your life. So clearer communication, clearer boundaries, clearer standards, repair, receiving, discernment, self-trust, self-honesty, and responding to reality and the facts of reality quicker. And it's also going to ask you and require of you to keep choosing the unknown over the familiar. There's that beautiful quote that says, it's your path when you can't see the path and the path disappears. If you can see it paved out in front of you, that's not your path, that's somebody else's. So that is the deepest threshold of transformation and change and shifting the pattern. Because the old pattern is familiar. You know how that goes. That's on a loop. That's repeating. The choosing of the unknown over the familiar is what's going to shift it. You have no cognitive or lived proof that that's the right choice. You just have a knowing that you need to move differently. You need to move in a new way. You need to choose something different, choose something unknown. It's an inner pull, that's a conversation with the divine. You need to follow that rather than the frustrating and safe, familiar reality. Because changing the dynamic, changing what you're creating is going to require you investing in something you can't see. You can't see how it's going to play out. And so let's close it there. There is so much here in terms of you being able to look into the way you are participating with the current dynamics that you are creating. Looking at how they support your current needs, how they support your current identity, how they support your current emotional range, how They support your current capacity to weather loss and meet fear and meet the unknown and the responsibility and the learning of new skills. All of that is what keeps the current patterns in place. So being aware of those aspects and then just tending to bits and pieces as you go through, you're going to start to take the energetic investment from that first bucket of the current reality, the current dynamic, the current patterns, and be rapidly starting to put it into what it is that you actually want to create, which is going to create the biggest shifts in your life, and in a way that the vast majority of people will never actually choose to do, never actually access. So thank you for being here today. It's been such a joy to share more on this topic, and I can't wait to see you next week.